We have a very special interview with you now this morning. We have Katie O'Reilly, who is the mastermind behind this wonderful new production in collaboration with the Wales Millennium Centre.
That's right.
And it's the Beauty Parade.
It is.
Are you going to tell us a little bit about it?
Oh,
And tell us a lot about it.
Tell us a lot.
I'd love to. The Beauty Parade came out of a story I was told 20 years ago by Molly Schuselet, who was my sort of adopted grandma. She'd been a woman that was working with WAF during the Second World War. And we became very close friends, and she was my adopted grandma, really.
Yeah.
And she was telling me about these women who were just ordinary women, but maybe with French parents, who had brilliant French, who were then, shopkeepers or just teachers, just ordinary people who were selected to be part of a secret force that were trained to be spies and then parachuted into occupied France between 1941 and 44 to help the French resistance prepare for the D-Day landing.
Wow.
I mean, it's extraordinary.
It is, yeah.
In true story, these unsung heroes, because it was secret, in fact, it was classified until quite recently. So there were some stories that came out about these kind of incredible spies. There's a woman, Odette Sampson. They made films about her in the late 40s and the 50s because she was really, really famous and was an extraordinary figure. But I was interested in the ordinary women, the women that didn't come home, the women that perhaps didn't survive the missions, or the women that are still in the classified documents in the War Office even now.
How are these disappearances explained to families back home?
Well, often, I mean, from
Incredible.
with the research, what you'd say is you'd have to sign the Official Secrets Act. And you'd say, oh, I've got to go away for work. Oh, it's nothing exciting, my boring old job. But you know what it is, careless talk costs lives, can't talk about it. And they go off. And often the families didn't even know until well after the war. And some cases, not until like the 1970s and later, what had actually happened to those women.
Wow.
And often, they were often kind of imprisoned, sometimes, unfortunately, facing the firing squad. But the majority of them that were detected and imprisoned by the Gestapo ended up in concentration camps. Wow. And a few of them survived the concentration camps, but unfortunately, I think we all know the history of that and the fact that, very few survived.
It's an incredible story.
It's amazing.
It's a story which, people are still alive today that went through the war, the Second World War, and people can remember stories being told and everything, but today's generation would have no idea, absolutely no idea what they actually went through.
Yeah, but also, you see, because people signed the Official Secrets Act,
They couldn't know.
people couldn't talk about what they did during the war.
Yeah.
And like Molly, my friend who I was talking about, she was only being able to talk about it. And it was like, then it was 50, 60 years after the war. But because you'd signed the Official Secrets Act, you weren't allowed to talk about what you did.
So these amazing stories which
Yeah.
your friend has told you,
Yeah.
how long has this been bubbling over in your head? I
Oh,
must
I've
do
been-
something with
I've been
this. I
dying
really
to.
must.
Well, nearly 20 years
Wow.
since she first told me. But I couldn't get any information because it was largely classified.
Yeah.
Because they're only been releasing the information really in the last kind of 10 to 15 years. And there's still some that I'm waiting to get my hands on, which won't be available until later this year.
Oh, wow.
So there's still stuff that's classified.
Yeah.
So I've been desperate to do this for absolutely ages and wanted to tell these stories about these amazing women. But I also wanted to work with some of my collaborators. So it's Rebecca Applin. Becky Applin is an amazing composer that I've worked with a few times in the past. And Sophie Stone, who is a performer, we've made like 3 or 4 productions together. Sophie is a fantastic performer who also uses visual language. And a couple of years ago, I got a Creative Wales Major Award from the Arts Council of Wales, where it was about professional development. And as a playwright, I really wanted to explore what happens when you start bringing music and song in, because I don't usually do that with the kind of work that I make in theatre. And so we decided that we would try and create this amalgamation of song, music, visual language, projected language, spoken language, all together. And that's what the Beauty Parade is.
Yeah.
So that came out of my Creative Wales Award that I got from the Arts Council. But I was right, a couple of years ago, I was right at the end of my year exploring things from the Arts Council bursary. And I was a bit cheeky. I came to Wales Millennium Centre and I said, would you be able to give me some free rehearsal space? Because if you could, the money that I had for rehearsal space, I could actually then give to some actor musicians to come together with Sophie and Becky and I to actually experiment and explore a bit with this idea that I'd had going in my head for so long, both in form as well as in the stories that we wanted to tell. And of course, this place here, they've been amazing. Wales Millennium Centre went, yes, gave us the free space, gave us the support. We did a bit of a sharing of, well, this is what we're thinking with music and song and spoken language and visual language and this kind of collaboration between deaf and hearing artists. And they commissioned me. They said this should happen.
Amazing.
It was. And so, both, Emma Evans, she's the senior producer here. She's our producer of the production. She was there right from the very first seed. And, and also Graham Farrow, the artistic director here, has been incredibly supportive. He saw the stuff and went, this has got to happen.
And the
here
story.
It is, exactly.
And of course it all comes back to the stories as well. I mean, they're beautiful stories, they're sad stories, but they're courageous stories too. And, there's a lot of inspiration to take from them.
I think so. I think so because, they were so-called ordinary women.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet they did the most extraordinary things. And in many cases, they actually gave their lives for liberty.
Absolutely.
And for freedom and to fight against fascism and Nazism.
Very much the unsung heroes of the war.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, just a reminder of what people will give to try and keep freedom and, the what they want to do to stop the rise of, extremism like that, the rise of the right.
Yeah, certainly a route we never want to go down ever again or experience ever again.
And we don't, and that's partly also why we want to try and make this kind of work, because, let's face it, we do know that there are Holocaust deniers.
Absolutely, yeah.
And as you said a little while ago, there's maybe younger generations have no idea what people did or what they went through. And I think we, what is it? There's a saying. It's something like, "Those who don't know their history are condemned to repeat it." We don't want to repeat.
No, not at all. Yeah. So hopefully, work like this, it can be, largely entertaining, which is what you want to do as well. But if it can inspire and educate people, I mean, you're ticking every box.
Well, I'd hope to. And the thing that I didn't know until I started working on this project. I'm in rehearsals, and sometimes there's not a dry eye in the room.
Oh, wow.
Because it's so powerful with the music and the singing, and then it's so kind of visceral and emotional, the visual language that Sophie's doing. Never mind the story itself.
Yeah.
And that this is also based on real life stories. And so we're all there kind of going, oh God, kind of welling up sometimes because it's really powerful and emotional. I think it moves us. But I hope that it'll also have the impact on an audience.
I'm sure it will.
As well.
I mean, it's a real good time to tell strength stories regarding women
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything. I think it's a real good time for women to stand up and say, yes, we done this too, and we are doing this. You know, they played major parts in major situations throughout life, not just now. And it's great to look back and think, wow, these women, ordinary women, done these, and they got no recognition,
Yeah.
absolutely nothing, you know?
I know, and quite, you know, Molly, my adopted grandma, she was summoned to Buckingham Palace sometime in the 1970s and was given a medal for the work that she'd done during the war. She didn't know, you never
Yeah.
knew who you were working for. And, you know, she always said, oh, I got acknowledged for what I did. But she said, I already know that there are girls that didn't make it,
Yeah,
and their families didn't even know. So their families couldn't be really proud
Yeah.
of what, you know, their daughter or their mother or their, you know, sister might have done. And I always found that was so sad, because she said she had no idea until she was kind of called, and they said, actually, during the war, you were working directly for Winston Churchill. Here's a medal for what you were doing. She was helping cracking codes and so on. And partly her saying to me, well, I think about, you know, the girls
yeah.
that didn't make it back.
It
And
must
the
be
girls,
such a bittersweet
It
moment,
is.
you know?
and that's partly why also I think we really wanted to tell some of these stories
Yeah.
about and honour these women.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. And through art, what a wonderful way to do it. You know, you've brought all these areas of the art together. I mean, it's not just a straightforward play, and there's music incorporated, there's so many other things going on. It must be such a melting point of ideas and creativity going on in this rehearsal space.
It is. I mean, sometimes we've got 3, 4 different things happening. We've got, you know, kind of working, we've got sound design, and then we've got composition with music over here, and then we've got people learning lines and people kind of practicing singing or practicing the cello, or, you know, and also we've got quite a big AV presence, which we're going to be using projections as well as part of the
Wow.
whole design. So you suddenly sometimes sort of there going, I'm in the middle of a hive. It's kind of buzzing with so many things happening
Yeah.
and going on. So we're going to be very shortly in the next week beginning to bring all those different layers together and seeing, you know, what it's like when, how do they communicate, how do they sit with each other. And that's the kind of thing, I mean, it'll be challenging, but that's also the exciting thing. When
Yeah.
you go, God, what is it going to be like?
Yeah, yeah.
All these different aspects coming together with one focus. So
Well, I'm extremely excited to see it. I have a fascination with World War II films,
Oh.
stories. I recently took Nathan back to my dad's, and we got out my grandfather's suitcase,
Oh,
which was
really?
full of, like, you know, war passes and passports and everything else, wasn't it? Ration books.
oh, really?
Simple Christmas cards sent home, and they were just allowed to write their name on it, not where they were from, but where they were or anything. Fascinating stories, and it's great that people like you were able to tell them again. And I know it's Molly's stories, but
Yeah.
you're able to tell them again,
Yeah.
and hopefully they'll be able to, I don't know, stay with people, and they'll remember them, and the stories will go on and on.
I hope so, because, you know, there's that thing that when you say somebody's name or when you think of them, they're alive again.
Yeah, yeah,
And, you know, and so that idea of some of these women that have been silent, their names haven't
yeah,
been spoken, their names haven't been necessarily remembered. Just to be able to put that in the public space, you know, and honour them, I think
they
is kind of
deserve it.
wonderful.
They
Yeah.
deserve it, don't they?
So, yeah.
Well, all the best with it.
Thank you.
So much for
Thank
speaking to
you.
us. We can't wait to see it. Okay, and we'll put lots of links up on our radio station, and
thank
so
you.
people know all about it.
That's
Thank you so
brilliant.
much.
Oh, it was just fantastic talking to you both. Thanks
Oh,
so much.
cheers. Thank
That's
you.
lovely.